The hospital hallway fell silent the moment Chief Surgeon Dr. Michael Carter pointed toward the exit and told veteran nurse Sarah Collins to go home. Every nurse, doctor, and patient nearby froze. Sarah had spent nearly 22 years serving others inside Mercy Regional Medical Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and yet on what seemed like the most humiliating afternoon of her career, she was being dismissed in front of everyone. Her hands trembled as she picked up the worn duffel bag she had carried to thousands of shifts. She wanted to explain herself, to remind everyone that one mistake did not erase decades of sacrifice, but exhaustion had stolen her voice. Then, before she reached the hospital doors, the sound of heavy military boots echoed through the corridor. 5 Navy SEALs entered the building in full uniform. The team leader stopped, turned toward the nurse everyone had just ignored, stood perfectly straight, raised a crisp salute, and addressed her with one word that stunned the entire hospital. Before this incredible story continues, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing true-to-life emotional stories that remind us how one act of compassion can change countless lives. Sarah Collins had never imagined her life would reach such a painful moment. She had grown up in rural Montana in a family that believed serving others was life's highest calling. Her father had been a firefighter, her mother a schoolteacher. Money had always been tight, but love was abundant. From childhood, Sarah dreamed of becoming a nurse after watching hospital staff save her younger brother following a terrible farming accident. That single night convinced her that heroes did not always wear uniforms or capes. Sometimes they simply wore blue scrubs and refused to give up on a stranger. For more than 2 decades, Sarah became exactly that kind of nurse. She volunteered for difficult shifts, stayed late without complaint, comforted frightened children, held the hands of elderly patients with no family, and quietly paid for prescriptions when struggling parents could not afford medicine. Most people inside Mercy Regional knew she never looked for recognition. She believed that if someone walked out of the hospital with hope, that was reward enough. But hospitals change. Administrators changed. Budgets tightened. Younger employees arrived knowing little about the sacrifices of those who came before them. Dr. Carter had become chief surgeon only 6 months earlier. Brilliant in the operating room but impatient outside it, he valued speed, efficiency, and flawless statistics. He respected skill, but he rarely noticed kindness because kindness could not be measured on spreadsheets. The day everything unraveled began with a devastating highway accident involving a military transport bus. Ambulances flooded the emergency entrance. Doctors rushed in every direction while nurses struggled to stabilize patient after patient. Sarah had already worked 12 exhausting hours before the emergency even began. She skipped lunch, ignored her aching feet, and focused entirely on saving lives. Among the injured was a young Marine whose heartbeat suddenly became unstable. Sarah noticed a subtle change before anyone else. Trusting her instincts, she interrupted another physician to demand immediate attention. Her quick thinking saved the Marine's life, but in the confusion another operating room experienced a delay because Sarah had temporarily reassigned critical equipment without authorization. The equipment was returned within minutes, and no patient suffered harm, but Dr. Carter saw only broken protocol. In front of staff members he questioned her judgment. Sarah tried explaining the circumstances, but every sentence sounded weaker than the last. The surgeon concluded that fatigue had impaired her decision-making. He ordered her to surrender her identification badge and leave until an investigation could be completed. Humiliation settled over her like a storm cloud. Nurses she had mentored avoided eye contact. Some pitied her while others feared becoming associated with someone under investigation. Sarah quietly collected her belongings and prepared to leave the building she had considered her second home. Then came the boots. The Navy SEALs entered with calm confidence that instantly changed the atmosphere. Hospital security stepped aside. Even Dr. Carter paused, uncertain why an elite military unit had arrived without warning. The team leader walked directly toward Sarah. Without hesitation he saluted her. The others did exactly the same. Confused whispers spread through the hallway. Sarah lowered her eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. The commander introduced himself as Lieutenant Commander Nathan Brooks. He explained that his team had traveled from Virginia after completing a classified training assignment because they had finally discovered where Sarah Collins worked. Every member of the hospital listened in complete silence. Nathan revealed that 14 years earlier his Special Operations Unit had returned from an overseas mission carrying several critically wounded teammates. Their aircraft had landed unexpectedly at a military medical facility where Sarah happened to be volunteering during a disaster response exercise. One severely injured operator required emergency blood before surgeons could begin life-saving treatment. Supply shortages threatened to delay everything. Sarah had not hesitated. She volunteered to donate immediately despite finishing an exhausting overnight shift. Then she remained beside frightened military families throughout the entire night, comforting spouses, praying with parents, delivering updates whenever doctors were too overwhelmed to speak. She refused recognition afterward and quietly returned to work before sunrise. Nathan admitted something few people knew. One of the wounded operators that Sarah helped save was his older brother, Matthew Brooks. Matthew survived because surgery started in time. He later returned home, married, became a father to 3 children, coached youth baseball, and spent every Thanksgiving reminding his family about the nurse who expected nothing in return. Years later Matthew passed away from an unrelated illness, but before his death he gave Nathan one mission. Find Nurse Sarah Collins. Tell her she never saved just one soldier. She saved an entire family. Nathan had spent years searching through incomplete military records until finally locating Mercy Regional Medical Center. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She barely remembered that night. To her it had been another exhausted shift among hundreds. To Matthew Brooks it had been the beginning of the rest of his life. The commander then handed Sarah a small wooden box. Inside rested a challenge coin engraved with the insignia of the Navy SEALs and a simple inscription. Compassion is courage. Nathan explained that every member of the team had agreed unanimously that Sarah deserved the coin because true courage was not measured only on battlefields. Sometimes courage looked like staying awake for 20 straight hours to comfort strangers who would never know your name. The hallway became completely silent. Several nurses quietly wiped away tears. Even patients waiting outside examination rooms watched with emotional disbelief. Dr. Carter stood motionless. For the first time since becoming chief surgeon, statistics, policies, and procedures no longer seemed like the whole story. He slowly walked toward Sarah and asked the commander whether he truly believed one nurse could have influenced so many lives. Nathan answered by pointing toward the photographs tucked inside his wallet. 3 smiling children. My brother never met these kids without first meeting her. Those words struck Dr. Carter harder than any professional criticism ever could. He realized he had judged Sarah based on one stressful afternoon while completely overlooking 22 years of extraordinary service. The hospital board, which had arrived after hearing about the unexpected military visit, reviewed the emergency incident immediately. Witnesses confirmed that Sarah's decision had directly saved the young Marine without causing permanent harm elsewhere. Instead of negligence, investigators concluded she had demonstrated exceptional clinical judgment under impossible circumstances. That evening Dr. Carter publicly apologized before the entire emergency department. He reinstated Sarah immediately and announced a new annual award recognizing nurses whose compassion saved lives beyond what medical charts could ever record. The award carried Sarah's name. Months later the hospital unveiled a small wall filled with handwritten letters from former patients whose lives had been touched by simple acts of kindness from nurses. Sarah insisted every nurse's name appear there because she believed compassion was always a team effort. As she finished another ordinary shift 1 year later, she walked past that wall without stopping. She smiled at young nurses beginning their own journeys and quietly headed toward the parking lot carrying the same worn duffel bag. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was extraordinary. Yet somewhere across America, children laughed because their fathers had survived. Families celebrated birthdays because someone in blue scrubs refused to quit. Veterans remembered hope because one exhausted nurse believed every life mattered equally. Before we end, if Sarah's story touched your heart, Please like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still exists, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us ordinary people can make extraordinary differences. Special request, tell us in the comments, what one act of kindness has changed your life forever? Sometimes the loudest heroes never raise their voices. They simply keep showing up, one patient at a time, proving that compassion can echo through generations. And on that unforgettable day in a hospital hallway in Colorado, everyone finally understood why 5 Navy SEALs stood at attention and called an ordinary nurse by the title she had earned long before they ever arrived.